Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome CTS230 Section 841 students for the first 8-week term of the fall 2017 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This is the Networking 3, or the Cisco Networking Academy Scaling Networks V6 course, and this morning's video tutorial and solution set is going to be on Packet Tracer Activity ScaN for Scaling Networks, EIGRP Practice Skills Assessment. Now, this is one of those activities that is going to call everything that we've worked on. And when I pull the topology up, you're going to see that there is quite a bit of work that is going to need to be done here. And so we'll walk through each of the steps explaining why we're doing what we're doing. Let me roll to the top here, and you can see that we've got all kinds of things that are going to need to be configured here. Now, one of the toughest things to understand right out of the gate is it says all iOS device configurations should be completed from a direct terminal connection to the device console. And that's one of the reasons you'll see we've got what appear to be, 3, 6, 9, 12 PCs down here. Because when I click on the router to configure it, you'll notice it says configure is locked. So I'll click OK, and then that begs the question, it says right here, should be completed from a direct terminal connection to the device console. Well, what that's telling you is that you're going to have to come down here to connections, and then you're going to have to get that rollover cable connection, and I'll use W1 as an example here. The RS232, right? It's like that blue rollover cable that we use. And I'm going to bring it up here, and we're going to connect it to the console port, right? And so that's how I get connected into the central router. Now, the same is going to be true of the east router, the west router, the data center switch, the building 1 switch, the building 2 switch. So everything we're going to be configuring, we're going to be needing a direct, and this is what they mean by a direct terminal connection to the device console. It's done like this. So now when I pull the, what's the number here? W1? The W1 PC up, and let's give ourselves a little more space because these are the windows in which we're going to be working through our configuration. I would pull up the terminal window, right? And you can see those are the terminal settings, and I click OK. And now we're connected in. Now that print is a little small. Let me see if, and I'm hoping that we are not going to be stuck with that. And it looks like we are. Now that, so that is truly a little small, but we're going to make do with what we've got here. And I will be sure, as always, to sort of MC the changes that we're going to be making. So let's scroll down here over on the right-hand side. And here we go. So let's start out. So instructions, EIGRP and HSRP configuration, right? So you can see very important that HSRP configuration along with the EIGRP. So configure IPv4 and IPv6 default static routes on the central router to the internet cloud. Now, when we look at this, and I'm going to give myself a little more room here to pull that back up. When we look at this, you can see it makes sense that the central router is going to be the one on which we configure these default routes to send the traffic out here to the internet cloud from our EIGRP configuration. And so let's see on that central router, what do we currently have configured? So we're at user exec. I'll type enable to get to privilege exec. And let's do a quick show run here, and let's look at the EIGRP configuration section, and there isn't one, right? So right out of the gate, we realize there is no EIGRP configuration here. So let's get into global config, and let's say, and do they want, let me be clear here on the AS number they want us to use. It should be 1, but let's check that. EIGRP, router ID, interface bandwidth, and redistribution of default routes. It doesn't have an AS number, at least I do not see one. Here we go, sorry. So use an AS of 99 for all EIGRP routers. So let's go ahead and say router EIGRP 99, right? And we should see, once we get some activity going here, that our completion percentage down here on the bottom is going to start to increase. Let me pull this back since we have a smaller font that we're going to be working with. Now, on the central router, what is my EIGRP router ID? Well, it's 1.1.1.1. And we are going to be redistributing a static IPv6 route. It says activate routing for the appropriate networks. Use inverse masks that specify only addresses within the networks. And so if I were to say do show IP interface brief, we can see that these are the three networks. We've got these serial interfaces here. Let's make sure we have the subnet masks properly scoped out. So we've got all /30s, right? So that is going to make things extremely straightforward. So we're going to say network 192.168.100. Now the IP here is .9. So remember, if we're working with /30s and we've got 4 total IPs, of which 2 are going to be usable, this is what we would look like here. 5, 6, 7, and then 8 is going to be the network ID. .9 is our address here, and then we've got .10 is going to be the other usable, then .11. And so again, what is our increase size here, or what is the, there's a specific word I'm looking for that is escaping me right now. What is the increment in which we increase, right, these network IDs? You can clearly see it's 0, 4, 8, 12, 16 by 4, right? 20, and then 24. So in the 20, which is going to be this other one we're going to be dealing with here, the usables are 21 and 22, right? So that is the network ID, and that is the network ID. So .8 and .20 will be our network ID. So we're going to say .8, and it's going to be 0.0.0.3, remembering that we're using the inverse, right? We're using the inverse. And so this will be an easy fix to come back and say .20. Now, I also want to say no auto summary. You'll notice that it doesn't mention that, and that's one of the things about the scan activities in some cases we've got to be very aware of, is that in some cases it's not going to tell us to do things that it would expect that you would do automatically, right? So let's be aware of that. So we've got AS99, and let me see something here real quick. Let's make sure we have AS99. So we've got AS99, we've got the router ID, we have the 2 network statements on which EIGRP is going to be running on the interfaces, I should say, and it's these 2 serial interfaces here. Now, it's not asking for passive interface statements, but best practice, and I'm going to say passive interface default, and then we're going to go no passive interface serial 000, and then no passive interface serial 001, right? Because that's a best practice. We want to make sure that EIGRP only runs on the intended interfaces. And so we'll get that in there, and I'm looking over here to the right. Okay, so that for the central router would appear to be everything with EIGRP for IPv4. So now let's go ahead and do EIGRP for IPv6 on the central router. And how do we do that? Well, remember, we have to say IPv6. Now, if I said IPv6 router EIGRP 99, what would happen? Let's give it a try. Router EIGRP 99. We see that error, IPv6 routing is not enabled. So I want to come back and say IPv6 unicast routing to make sure that we get that enabled, so that we can now come back and say IPv6 router EIGRP 99. Now, if I say do show run, I'll be curious to see if they shut us down in our EIGRP for IPv6, and they did, right? You can clearly see they've got to shut down. So I'm going to say passive interface default, no passive interface serial 000, no passive interface serial 001. And those are the two interfaces we want to be running EIGRP on. And then let's go ahead and say no shut, and let's set that EIGRP router ID to 1.1.1.1. So now what do I need to do with EIGRP for IPv6? Exactly, I need to go under the interface and I need to say IPv6 EIGRP 99, right? And same thing, interface serial 001, IPv6 EIGRP 99, and you can see our completion percentages slowly creeping toward 100 there in the lower right-hand corner. All right, so those are the two interfaces on which we're going to run EIGRP for IPv6. Now, remember, we're configuring IPv4 and IPv6 default static routes. So let's make that happen here. So I'm going to say do show IP interface brief. And so we know for IPv4, we do our quad 0 setup here. And let's go ahead and say, I think it's only going to allow me to say serial 010. And let's see if that is what they were looking for. We get that very common default route without gateway. If not, a point-to-point interface may impact performance, but this is a point-to-point interface. And now let's put our IPv6 route ::/0 out the serial 10 interface. And that is also the command that we're looking for our static route for IPv6. Now, we've got the static routes configured. The static default routes are configured on this router. However, what do we need to do? Exactly, we need to make sure that we propagate these, that we advertise these default routes into EIGRP. So let's start out with EIGRP or router EIGRP 99, and we're going to say redistribute static, and then I'm going to say IPv6 router EIGRP 99 and redistribute static. And so now these, and I'm going to do a quick write mem here. Let's save our configuration. So now those two default static routes have been advertised out into EIGRP. So let's review our EIGRP configuration here. You can see we've got our router ID set for the EIGRP for IPv4. We've got passive interface default with our no passive interface on the two serial links facing the east and west routers. And now in the IPv6 configuration, we have it no shut, so it is up. We've got our router ID set there. We've got our passive interface default with our no passive interface command. And then we've got that redistribute static on both. And then there are the two static routes going out to the internet. And we did see the needle move on the completion percentage, so we know that we are good there. So now when I come over here and I look, step 1.1, configure the statics. We did that, use the outgoing interface as the value in our config. We're good there. Configure the East 2 router with an IPv4 route to the internet cloud using the outgoing interface. So here is the East router. Now, I'm sorry, East 2 router. Let's get on the right router here. If I click on it, what do we get? We get configuration as locked, just as we would expect. And actually, let me pull back. I need to make sure we keep these guys so that I can get to them. Some logistical challenges definitely with this exercise here, so we'll bring it over to there. Now, so what do I need to do? Well, where's my console connector? It's right there. And we'll just grab this guy here. We'll say RS-232, and I'm going to string it, whoops, up to the East 2 router console port. So now when I bring up this PC, which is just PC1, and we put in the console, whoops, not the command window. We want the terminal prompt. So there we go. We're on the East 2 router in user exec mode. So let's type in enable to get to privilege exec. And let's get into global config with configure terminal. And so the requirement is configure the East 2 router, do show IP interface brief, with an IPv4 default route to the internet cloud using the outgoing interface. And we can clearly see the 203 address here, that's serial 000. That is the interface we're going to use. So let's come back and say IP route with quad zeros. and our outgoing interface is serial 0, 0, 0. And again, we get that warning, but we're okay with that, and we move the meter, so we're good there with East 2. So that step is done. On the central, east, and west routers, and in fact, I'm going to lower this guy down here. We're going to drop him down because I think that may be all we need to do there on East 2 for now. All right. So we've got the central router configured here. So we still have to deal with east and west. And so now we kind of get into this, okay, I've got to run another console connection. I'll just pick E1 here, and we'll swing it up to the east router into the console port. And I'll pick W4, whoops, not W4 like that, but let's run our console cable connection here into the west router, right? So we've got that taken care of. So we'll deal with the east router first, but it's going to be from the perspective of the terminal application on PC4, or what is being listed as PC4. So here we are on the east router, and let's do the same thing for EIGRP for IPv4 and IPv6. If I come into global config, let's say do show IP interface brief. Let me take a quick look at the interfaces here. All right, so everything looks good there. Now, remember, when we're making that configuration, it says activate routing for the appropriate networks. Use the inverse mask to be specific. We've got the router IDs. And here is where we have this gig interface. And I can almost guarantee you that it is going to be expecting a passive interface command for that interface. And let's see if it wants the passive interface for the specific interface, or if we do passive interface default and then no passive, the two serial interfaces. So we'll take a look at it from both perspectives. So router EIGRP 99, and we'll start out with that immediately. So if I say passive interface gig 00, does it move the meter at all for me on my completion percentage? And it does. So that is what it was expecting. And this raises the question, on the central router, we didn't need to do any of the interfaces as passive, any of the LAN, because there's no LAN connectivity. So we should be good there, right? So we passive interface that. We don't have the default, so we don't have to say no passive interface, but now we need the network statement. So let's take a look real quickly. It should be a /24 and then 2 /30s, and it is. So let's say network 10.1.0.0 0.0.0.255. That's the inverse of the dotted decimal notation net mask, which would be 255.255.255.0. So there's my first network statement. I'm also going to say, and actually let's check, do show IP protocols. Okay, automatic summarization is disabled, but I'm going to throw that in there anyway just to be sure, right? We'll say no auto summary. So now, do show run, we need these 2 /30 network statements here. So we're going to say network, what is that? 192.168.100. Now, our usable IP here is .10, but this raises the question, that is not the network ID. I need the network ID on which we're going to be running, which we're going to be applying this network statement. So remember, if it goes in increments, intervals of 4 for /30s, it would be .0, .4, .8, and .12. So if .8, the two usables are .9 and .10, that is where we fall. And then we simply do our inverse mask of 0.0.0.3 and take a look at that. We've got an EIGRP adjacency up. So let's say do show IP EIGRP neighbors. And you can see there's my adjacency. What about a do show IP EIGRP interfaces? Right, there's that one interface on which we're running it. What about a do show IP route EIGRP? Because what are we interested in seeing? Yeah, did I get that default route, right? So take a look at that, and we've got it. And remember, that administrative distance is telling me that that is less trustworthy than internally right, learned EIGRP with an administrative distance of 90 for internal, 170 for external. All right, so we picked that up, and that is good. Let's set my EIGRP router ID to, on the east router, 2.2.2.2, and that is going to it's not reset. It's going to reset it's going to flap the adjacency is the word I'm looking for. It's going to flap the adjacency, right? Because we're changing the router ID here. Okay, so activate routing on appropriate networks. So we've got one more network here, and let's take a look. And it should be the 33, right? So I'm going to get this network statement in here for 192.168.100. 192.168.100. Now it's 33. So if I went in increments of 4, I would end up at 32, right? So we know that that is the network ID, and then we use our inverse mask of 0.0.0.3. So let's take a look at our EIGRP configuration as it stands right now. We've got AS99, we've got the adjacency up with one of the routers. There's the router ID, passive the gig 00 interface. And again, it doesn't tell you specifically to passive that interface. What it says is activate routing for the appropriate networks, and I thought I saw something else in here that might be a little leading, but it's not. So remember, we're passiving that interface. That is a best practice because nobody out this interface here, these guys are not speaking EIGRP, and neither is East 2. It does specifically state that router East 2 does not use EIGRP routing. So out, whoops, sorry, I was trying to move over here. So out this interface here, no need to speak EIGRP, right? So passive it, security purposes and also bandwidth utilization purposes. So we'll pull this guy back up here. And now let's do our EIGRP for IPv6. So IPv6, router EIGRP 99. And, of course, IPv6 unicast routing needs to be enabled first, and then we can come back with that router 99. So first thing we're going to do right out of the gate, EIGRP router ID on East is 2.2.2.2, and we're going to say no shut because we can assume that it's definitely going to be shut down. And now do show IPv6 interface brief, and it should be the same interfaces as IPv4. And we want to go ahead and we're going to say passive interface gig 00. Now I'm curious to see the activities prior to this didn't give us points and didn't actually ask us to passive the LAN interfaces. But let's see, do we move from 17 to 18% here? Is it going to ask us to do that? And it's not. So that's okay. So we'll still leave that passive because, again, no EIGRP speakers. But if I go to serial 000 and say IPv6, EIGRP, whoops, I'm tempted to put 1 there, but it's going to be 99. All right, and the adjacency is up, and then interface serial 001, IPv6, EIGRP 99, and that has come up. So we've got that adjacency. Do show IPv6, EIGRP, whoops, neighbor, sorry about that. And you can see we've got the adjacency with the central router. But most importantly, do show IPv6 route, and we'll leave it at that because we typically get that error when we include EIGRP. Do I have that default route? And we do. And this is very, very important that we've got that default route. All right, so can only be checked for this assessment indirectly. After you've completed your configuration, in order to get credit, you must do the following. All right, so we are going to have to get in here and make some changes to one of the PCs. And so let's take a look. Let me make sure here, do show run. Let's see from the EIGRP v6, the router, the no shutdown, the passive interface, and that, whoops, that looks good, and that's the east router. And now we're going to work on the west router. So let's come over to the west router. Let's get to our desktop and to our terminal program and give ourselves a little more real estate here. All right, so on the west router, and I'll move that right up into there, let's do the same thing, right? Some great repetition here and practice with EIGRP. So we go from user exec to privilege exec with the enable command. I go into global config with configure terminal. And let's go ahead and start with EIGRP for IPv4. But before we do that, there's an interface. Yeah, so this interface here, it was indicating as I was reading the testing here, where's it at? Activate the gig00 interface on the router. And so that is in your score report for EIGRP interface activation. You'll see an item. Yeah. Okay, so we're definitely going to bring up that gig00 interface on West. And so let's take care of that right away to make sure we have the right interface. I'm just going to move out of the way here to see that we're up. And that it may be shut down here on the data center switch. So we'll check it out. We'll see what we've got here and we'll work our way through. All right, so back to EIGRP. So router EIGRP 99. And we do have a LAN interface there, and we also have a connection out to the test cloud we need to be aware of. So let's come down here. All right, so I'm going to say passive interface. And actually, before we passive anything, let me say do show run. And let's look at those interfaces. Okay, so .1Q trunk out gig00. So you can almost bet that what they're going to be anticipating is passive interface gig00.10. And let me hit enter and see if we move the needle at all. Yeah, and so they're going to be looking for this. gig00.15. So all of these sub interfaces, the expectation is we passive all of these, right? Instead of doing a passive interface default, they want us to go in and specifically pick off these interfaces. We're going to get that native interface 2, which is that gig 0099. All right, and no IP address on gig 0099. We may be putting an IP on there later. Excuse me. So you can see here that that is where the sub-interface configuration is. So here's what we're going to need to do. There's going to be definitely some work to be done here. Do show IP interface brief, and we are going to have to get, and those are all /24. So again, it's going to be straightforward, but definitely some typing here, 0.0, and then the wildcard mask 0.0.0.255, right? So the network statements are going to be straightforward, but there's quite a few of them here. So we're going to have to get the 15, and then the 20, and they go up in increments of 5 here, it looks like. And the native VLAN, which currently doesn't have an IP assigned here. But let's roll up here, and let's see on the West router. Yeah, so no IP address. So let's keep that in the back of our minds because it's not asking for that. Let me look at the West, EIGRP, router ID, bandwidth, interface bandwidth, interface bandwidth, interface bandwidth. Okay, so we're going to be walking back to each of these routers for the interface bandwidth command. All right, so let's roll back down here. And let's get our router ID set now that we've got that. We'll leave the network command off of that 99. And then let's say EIGRP router ID, and it's going to be for West 3.3.3.3. East, okay, I'm sorry. Let's stick with West here. So West 3. So we're good there. And let's go ahead and see what we've got. Let's get the networks in for the serial interfaces. So network statement, and these are going to be /192.168.100. You can see 34. So if I was going up in increments, it would be 32 as the network ID because 33 and 34 would be the usables. And then the inverse is 0.0.0.3. And we know we've got success there, right? That adjacency pops up. And then we need one more, which is going to be for 22. So if I went in increments of 4, it would be 20 is the network ID, and then 21 and 22 are my usables. So 20 is my network ID, and we should have an adjacency come up. And we do, and let's say do show IP route EIGRP. And are we getting our default route? We are. That default route, which was configured as a static on central, is being picked up, and so that is all good. So let's look at this here and let's make sure. And you can see we definitely have quite a bit going on in the EIGRP config here. And the last thing I'm going to say is no auto summary, just to be certain. So that should take care of EIGRP. Do show Ipv6 interface brief. Yeah, and we've got just as much work to do here on the Ipv6 side. So let's say Ipv6 router EIGRP 99, and of course Ipv6 unicast routing. Nice of it to tell us, right? Always good to get a reminder. So we get that command typed in. Let's get our router ID in here. EIGRP router ID in here first. EIGRP router ID is 3.3.3.3. Right now, remember we're going to be shut down, so I have to say no shut. Now, we do have, and if I look at this here, we've got these passive interfaces. So we're going to come back. We're going to do this again. Passive interface gig 00.10, gig 00.15, gig 00.20, and gig 00. I'm going to put it in here in anticipation that we may be called into to do that. And then we've got the test cloud interface. And so this is interesting here. So I'll leave, I believe we're going to need that test cloud, and we can't see into that test cloud. But in terms of validation, that is what we're going to be using. All right, so we're going to leave that right now. We'll leave that alone. So let's get into our interfaces, because now we need to get into interface gig 00.10, and we need to say Ipv6 EIGRP 99, interface gig 00.15, interface gig 00.20, and interface gig 00.99. And again, I'm anticipating that we are going to have some, maybe that'll be a management network thing that we may need. So that's why we're going to drop that in there. All right, so we've got that in there. So let's get our serial interfaces in there. Do show IP interface brief. I'm doing IPv4 command here because it's easier to see the interfaces. And we know we're going to be looking at serial 000.001, and then do show IPv6, IPv6 interface brief 010. So interface serial 000 and IPv6 EIGRP 99, and there's an adjacency, good thing. Interface serial 001. IPv6 EIGRP 99, that's a good thing. And now the big test, interface serial 01, is it 0010? IPv6 EIGRP 99. And let's get Dropbox out of the equation there. All right, so I'm going to pull that command back. Did that move the needle at all? And it didn't. So I'm going to keep that on there because I believe we're going to need that network, or maybe any networks, and there was no adjacency that came up on that interface. Okay, so now what we need to be thinking about is it asked us to set the interface bandwidth as well. So let's deal with that. We're going to start with the central router. I believe this is central, and it is. So let's go from user exec to privilege exec. And I'm going to say show interface serial 000, and it shows me the bandwidth is 1544. And so the question becomes, If I scroll down here to the serial interfaces, so the clock rate it shows is 2 million. So let's see if they're looking for us to do the following and to say bandwidth. And if they're looking for, and that is actually what they're looking for. Okay, so they're looking for us to set the bandwidth to match the clock rate, but in kilobits per second. So that would be 2 meg, setting it to 2,000 kilobits per second. So that worked. So now let's go into interface serial 001 and let's say bandwidth 2,000, and that should move, and it does, and it moved the needle. Now the question is, on the interface to the internet cloud, do they want us to do that? So that would be interface serial 010, and let's see, bandwidth 2123. Do we get any kind of credit for that? We do not. So it wasn't looking for that. So I'll go ahead and say no bandwidth. So only on the EIGRP serial interfaces in the EIGRP autonomous system does it appear that it's looking for that. So with West, it would be interface serial 000, bandwidth 2000, and we should get a point for that, and we did not. Do show interface serial 000. Okay, so we did not get a point for that. Let me see if we set it to 1544, which is what it probably was initially. And as you can see, the bandwidths do not need to match for the adjacency to work. So we're not getting any credit for this. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to set it to 2,000 like we did the others. Serial 001 and bandwidth 2,000, 1, 2, 3. And do we get any credit for that on West? We do not. Let me check. I need to make sure. I swear it said router West interface bandwidth, right? But you'll notice that we're not getting any credit for those interface bandwidth commands on West anyway. All right, let's go to East, and let's see what happens here with East. So we'll go from user exec to privilege exec into global config. Do show IP interface brief. I think it's serial, 000. And let's say bandwidth 2000. And we did get a point there. And then interface serial 001, bandwidth, 2000. And we don't get any credit there. So that's interesting that it credited us for one of the two interfaces. All right, so we'll continue to move on. We'll have to keep that in the back of our mind. So now we're here, right? Now we're going to be confirming that the EIGRP for IPv6 worked. But before we do that, can we test right now from E2? We certainly can, right? So we should be able to test from E2. Everything should work. So I'm going to pull E2 up here. We'll follow the instructions. So on host E2, go to the desktop tab, open up the IP configuration, or I'm sorry, the command prompt, and we're going to telnet to 2001:db8:E as in echo : 1. So if your EIGRP for IPv6 configuration is correct, you should be able to reach the telnet router with the address above. Authenticate your telnet session with password Cisco. Move to the privilege exec mode using the password admin. Activate gig 00 on the router, exit the telnet session. So let's do this. So it clearly didn't work. So we're coming from E2 here. So the telnet server, this 2001 DB8, where is this? :E:::1. So is that in the test cloud? I doubt that's in the test cloud. It's not that remote server. And it said activate the gig 00 interface. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come to W3 here. And let's get a serial connection here on W3, RS232, and let's drag that to this data center switch here, and we'll put it in the console port. So now we're going to pull this guy up, and here's what I'm doing. I'm wondering, and let's get our terminal window up, and show IP interface brief. Is that gig interface? Okay, it's administratively down. So we know that we've got router on a stick. And not only is it shut down, there's no configurations. Let's get into global config, because here's what I'm looking to see, because it asks us to bring the gig interface up. And so since we're here on E2, I'm wondering if we're coming this way down into the data center. So I'm going to say interface gig 01. Let's make sure that that is the right interface, no shut. And it is the correct interface, right? So not only do we have to enable gig 00 on the west router, we have to enable it here, but we also need to do what? Switch port mode trunk. Because again, remember, that is should be a trunk interface. Switch port, I'm going to say no negotiate, and we got points for that. Let's say no negotiate. Do we get any credit for that? And it gives us credit for the no negotiate. So I'll be interested to see later on down if that was what it was looking for. And then switch port trunk native VLAN, we know that that is 99, and we bump to 40, so we get credit there as well. So now spanning tree has converged. We transitioned to the listening and the learning states. We're now in the forwarding state here. So now is that server over here somewhere? So let's go back to E2 and let's see if we can ping. See if we can ping that. Can I ping that address? db8:echo::1. All right, and the request is timing out. So if I'm coming from E2, let's come up here to the east router, which I believe is this guy way up here. And let's say, clearly we don't have a route, so let's see what the deal is. So show IPv6 route. So do I have any routing information here to that 2001 db8 echo? And we do. And we're learning it via EIGRP. We're learning it from the router with a link local of FE80::3. And that should be the west router here, right? That's who we're learning it from. Let me double check over here. And I'm wondering, that's got to be out here in the test cloud. So West 3, and now we've got, whoops, we didn't want that. So now we've got windows everywhere. And is this my west window? That's the central. So I'll move that down. And where is west? So let's see if I click W4. There we go. So let's take a look at our EIGRP for IPv6 configuration here. Because it's being learned 2001 db8 echo. And so the question is, how is that being learned? So it goes out that serial interface here, serial 010, and that does go to the test cloud. So let's see, can I ping 2001:db8:echo::1, and I do have connectivity. So that is functioning like it should. So it looks like we're pinging the IP of the other end of this serial link. So let's see if I come down here. We've got all of our router ID, the no shut, my passive interface commands are in there. So all of that IPv6 information is there. The router ID is there. All right, so we are looking now as to why we can't go from E2. Let's make sure this is broke still. Yeah, so the request is timing out, and we haven't done any configuration here, VLAN-wise or other. And so this may be a concern, but these guys appear to be all in that same /24. Let's do a trace. Trace RT over to 2001 DB8 colon echo colon colon 1, and let's see where that takes us. Nowhere. All right, was I supposed to, let's pull E2 back up again here, and let's see. It doesn't look like it's getting anywhere. IPv6, aha! So the IPv6 configuration is listed as static, and I'm a little embarrassed it took me a little longer to see that than it did. Now, do we have any addressing information? We do not, right? So let's go with, there's no DHCP set up, so I'm going to do auto config, right? So we've picked up our IPv6 address here, right? And there's my gateway, FE80 colon colon 22. So now let's see if we were chasing a problem that actually didn't truly exist other than the fact, and aha, so there we go. We're now making our hops, let's say Control-Shift-6 or just Control-C. All right, so now if we ping, we're getting destination host unreachable. All right, so let's go back to that trace. So clearly, we make it over to DB8 colon 20 colon colon 2, and that is as far as we get. And then DB8 colon 20 colon colon 2 is going to be who? This guy right here, East 2. So it appears that we are going out the East 2 router trying to reach a destination that's over here, and it looks like we're just kind of looping around here. And that is the link local that it's selected. Going out East 2. So we want it to prefer this path here to the East router. So let me take another look at the East router here. And let's see, show run. And that gig interface, 10.1.0.3. And we've got the link local there, but we picked a different link local first. FE80 colon colon 2. All right, and we are, I don't believe DHCP is configured over here. And it is not. So we passive the gig 00 interface. So let's see, that shouldn't impact IPv6 and the selection. Let's go back to the desktop here. So we're clearly going the wrong direction. So I'll say DHCP, and that's not going to work. And you can see the auto config, and maybe it's expecting a static, but there's no addressing information provided. All right, so we're going to leave this hanging out there for right now, because we're getting the IPv6 information from this interface on the East 2 router. We need to be getting it from here. In fact, let me do this. Let's see if I go into interface gig 00 and I say shut. Then let's pull up E2 and let's say DHCP, which it's not going to get. And then let me come back to the auto config. So there we go. So now we've got the correct default gateway here. And let's come back over here and now say no shut. So E2 should keep that same information that we've got there. And now let's go ahead and see from the command prompt, can we ping over to db8 echo : 1? So the request times out. We've got the right default gateway now. And you know what I just realized? I'm on the wrong PC. It's E22, not E2, and I apologize. So if you're screaming at the screen right now, you have every right to do so. So let's come over here and let's try to ping that address. 2001 db8 : echo : 1. And we have our first request timeout, and let's see, it's echo 2-2. And the ping is not working, but here's what we're going to try now. Let's go ahead and try that telnet command, because it's not asking us to ping, it's asking us to telnet. But I wanted to make sure we had reachability. So let's say telnet 2001 : db8 : echo : 1. And it's timing out on us here. And so let's go right back to the issue we had before. Let's see for IPv6. So we've got FE80 : 2. It's got a static address in here, right? So it should be taking us out there. That should be the way that we're going. So I'm going to come back to this because maybe we've got something else going on. So we'll swing back to that. Let's look at this. Customize EIGRP for IPv6. So configure the central router to automatically share the static route. We did that. Now, configure HSRP. So configure the East 1 and 2 routers with HSRP. In the scenario, the hosts on the East network are to be dual homed. In other words, if the active East router fails, this one right here, the East network host will use East 2. So here's the routers we're going to be configuring EIGRP between. So although connectivity to the rest of the East-West Corporation network will not be available, the hosts will be able to access the internet through the East 2 router because HSRP will switch to using it as the default gateway for the host. You'll configure East as the active router and East 2 as, East 2 is the backup. So let's get the East router up here and let's dive in here. So let's get into global config, and we know do show IP interface brief that we're talking about that gig 00 interface. So I'm going to go into interface gigabit Ethernet 00. So the standby 1, we're going to say version 2. Let's see if they're expecting version 2. I'm sorry, standby version 2. Were they expecting that? All right, it doesn't look like they were expecting version 2, so we'll go ahead and say no standby version 2. We'll say standby 1 IP. So the virtual IP is 10.1.0.1, right? So then standby 1 preempt, we have to have that in there. The priority should be standby 1 priority is going to be 150. So we've got that locked down. And that was all that they were looking for initially. Group number, virtual IP should immediately become the active router, and that's the preempt. And then the priority is set. So everything looks good there. So what about a do show standby brief? What do we see? We've got the virtual IP. We're speaking. We're going to become active here in a second as soon as it realizes that there's no neighbors out there. There we go, from speak to standby, from standby to active. And so that looks good. Now let's pull up East 2. And so here is East 2 interface gig 00. And same thing. I'm just looking here real quickly. Standby 1 IP address 10.1.0.1. Right, that's my virtual IP that's going to swing between these two routers. Leave all other HSRP values as the default. Now, what doesn't it tell us? Yeah, it doesn't tell us to say standby 1 preempt. So take a look at our completion percentage. You'll see it's at 45. When I put standby 1 preempt and hit enter, it should reward us with, and that's interesting, it drops us a point. So that's very interesting because this will not work with east 1 or east as the primary without that preempt command in there. So that is interesting. The default priority is 100. So that is very, very interesting because we would have to have the preempt command in there for this to work. And it doesn't appear, and in fact, it appears it's taking points away for not having that do show run. Let's see what we have on that gig 00 interface. Yeah, we require a preempt statement there, but it's pulling points away. So we're going to leave that off then for now. Okay, in order for the East 2 router to provide connectivity to the internet, it requires a default route to be configured as you're directed in step 1 above. This router is not configured for EIGRP, so we're good. So the E21 host, whoops, we had that guy up. So E21, we are going to configure with a default gateway address of 10.1.0.1. No DNS server was required, so we've got the IP address in there for that guy. And then E1, this guy here, we're going to configure with a default gateway address of that HSRP address, 10.1.0.1. And you can see we're picking points up for that. So we'll drop that down. So now they've been set up. Okay, so it's odd that HSRP, maybe it's just the way packet tracer is set up. So here we go. Now we're into the enhanced switching technologies. So configure the 3 ether channel links between switches data center, building 1, and building 2. So now we're over here on these guys. So I'm going to need some additional connectivity via the console ports. RS-232 into building 2. Okay, so ether channel, we're going to use LACP for everything using the information. Both sides of the channel should ask if the other side is willing to participate, and that is a giveaway that we are going to be active. So let's go ahead and set this up now. Port channel numbers, very important, right? These are our channel group queues here when configuring these ether channels. So we're going to start here on W2, and I'm going to continue to move to the left here. There we go. So we can see those links. So we're going to pull the desktop up, our terminal program, and dive in here. All right, so we're going to go into privilege exec, and I'm going to do a quick show run. Let's see. All right, lots of access ports, and our ports that we're interested in are all up here. Okay, so let's get into global config, and we're going to go interface range, and on the building 1 switch, fast Ethernet 03 to 4, right, I'm going to say channel group, and this is 1, mode active. That tells it we're doing LACP, and I'm even going to throw in here channel-protocol. Best practice, do they give you any reward for that? Probably not, and they don't. All right, but that's okay. So now let's get into interface PO1, where I'm going to say switch port mode trunk, switch port no negotiate, and then we're going to say switch port trunk, and the native VLAN should be 99, and we should probably pick up some points there. Now you'll notice all of those commands we didn't get any points for, and if I say do show run, my suspicion is, okay, it did. It did push it down there. All right, that's interesting. So it did push the configuration commands down there. And so that looks good. So the trunk links between West and data center should be active. We did that. the trunk between West and data center should use the native VLAN pre-configured on West, which is 99. Configure all of the port channels as static trunks with the appropriate native VLAN. We did that. Disable DTP negotiation. That's our switch port no negotiate. And we can see we're getting that native VLAN mismatch. All right. So that was the first Ether channel. Now, remember, building 1 is also participating with building 2. So interface range fast Ethernet 01-2. And we are going to say channel group, and this is going to be channel group 3, mode active. Again, best practice, channel protocol, LACP to lock us in. Interface PO3, switch port mode trunk, switch port trunk no negotiate. Whoops, switch port trunk no, I'm sorry, switch port no negotiate. No negotiate, and then switch port trunk native VLAN 99. And again, it pushed it down, do show run. So those ports should look very similar. There's port channel 1 and port channel 3. And there are the member ports, right? So do show Ether channel summary. Now this isn't going to show anything working right now. Do show Ether channel summary. But it does show the 2 port channel interfaces and the member ports that are there. So now let's transition over here to building 2, and let's get some work done on building 2. So, whoops, we'll move that up here, try to keep it out of the way a little bit. All right, so on building 2, we've got that native VLAN mismatch. That's okay. So let's get into, let's do a show run and look at those Ethernet interfaces. All right. So interesting here in building 2. Okay, it's using 5 and 6. All right, so we're good. So we'll get into global config. Interface range, fast Ethernet for building 2, 0, 5 to 6. And again, best practice, we should shut the ports down, but not going to hurt us here. So we're going to say channel group. And that is going to be channel group 2, mode active, channel protocol, LACP, interface PO2 for port channel 2, switch port mode trunk, switch port no negotiate, switch port trunk, native VLAN 99. And so there are trunk settings, and we should, at this point, do show, actually, sorry, we got to do 2 more interfaces here. So interface range, fast Ethernet, 0, 1, and 2. And here's where we're going to see some working Ether channels. So channel group 3, if I could spell group right there. Channel group 3, mode active, channel protocol, LACP, and interface PO3, switch port mode trunk, switch port trunk, native VLAN 99, and switch port no negotiate. Right, so we've got that. That inconsistency has been restored. If I say do show Ether channel summary now, we can see that the port channel 3 is now up, and that's between building 1 and building 2, and that is what we were looking for. So now let's get on to W4 here. And are we using W4 actually? No, we're using W3 to connect to the data center. Yes, it's W3. All right, so here's our data center switch. So let's get into global config and interface range. I need to move out of the way here. We're going to say interface range for data center, fast Ethernet 03 to 4. We're going to go ahead with channel group 1 mode active, and then channel protocol, LACP, into that port channel interface, switch port mode trunk, switch port no negotiate, switch port trunk, native VLAN 99. And that should bring that Ether channel, that port channel interface up. And now let's do the other data center. It's going to be interface fast Ethernet 05 and 6, interface range fast Ethernet 5 and 6. And we're going to say channel group, GROUP, and this is going to be 2, mode active, channel protocol, LACP, and then interface PO2, switch port mode trunk, switch port, no negotiate, switch port, trunk, native, VLAN, 99. All right, so that should take care of do show ether channel summary. And we are good. Consistency has been restored. All of the port channel interfaces are up and everything looks good. So now the trunk between West and data center should be active. The trunk between West and data center should use the native VLAN. Configure all the port channel interfaces. We did that. We disabled. All right, so now we're going to configure VTP. Now, the data center switch should be the only VTP server in the domain. So here we are in the data center switch. Let's say VTP mode server. Well, we're going to say VTP domain is going to be EW-access, ACCESS, and VTP password, capital E, capital W, ABC, exclamation mark. And so we've got our VTP password in there. So it's saying when we may need to add and delete some VLANs. So let's do that. Let's say VLAN 80, VLAN 90, VLAN 100, and then we'll say end, show VTP status, right? The configuration revision number is at 3, right? So we've definitely made some progress here. So now let's go ahead and take care of the building 1, where we're going to say VTP mode client, VTP domain is going to be EW-ACCESS, and then VTP password, most importantly, EW-ABC exclamation mark. All right, so now let's do a quick show VTP status. And it looks good there. What if, well, wait a second. Actually, if I say show VTP, or actually show VLAN brief. Let's see, did we get VLANs 80, 90? We did. And then 99 shows up. We got 100, 999 is dark, and that's our parking lot VLAN. All right, so we're good there. We're picking things up. Now to the building 2 switch, VTP mode client, and VTP domain is going to be EW-access, and VTP password EW-ABC bang. Do show VLAN brief. We should see those VLANs we created. There they are. And so everything looks good there. So VTP on the east-west side is set. Configure rapid per-VLAN spanning tree. And you know what we didn't do? These are 2960, so it should be the default as if I were to say do show interface trunk. We didn't say, okay, good. So 802.1q is our default. All right, so configure on the east-west side, data center building 1 and building 2 with RPVST as a default. All switches should use rapid spanning tree. So we're going to make that happen right now. So we're going to say spanning tree mode, rapid PVST or per-VLAN spanning tree. The data center switch is going to be the root bridge. And so let's go ahead and say here, spanning tree mode, rapid PVST, and then spanning tree. Now it doesn't tell you, oh, it does, okay. And the priority value should be 24576. Well, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can hard code it, or we can use the macro that we know, right? That root primary macro command that we know will automatically push the priority value down to 24576 from 32768. So I say spanning tree, and what are the VLANs? 10, 15, and 20. And it's going to be root primary, right? And that is going to take it down to what we want it to shift the value down to. All right, so switch to, and let me say do show VLAN brief. Are those VLANs interesting? So what do you notice? Is that those VLANs 10, 15, and 20 don't exist. And that's odd, so let's do this. VLAN 10, VLAN 15, and if we're getting points for this, VLAN 20, Did it give us any points for that? That's interesting. Those VLANs 10, 15, and 20 didn't even exist. Do show VLAN brief. And yeah, weird. Okay, so we've got that edit in there. The data center switch is set. So building 2 is this guy here. Building 2 is going to be spanning tree mode rapid PVST. And actually, we already did that. And did I forget to do that over here? Let's make sure that we did that. Let's say exit, spanning tree mode, rapid PVST. And then building 2 is going to be spanning tree, VLAN, and it's going to be 10, 15, and 20, 10, 15, 20. And it's going to be root secondary, which is going to give it that value of 28,672. Building 1 should be with the default priority, but remember, we need to change building 1 to spanning tree mode rapid PVST. So switch 1 of the building rapid PVST. So that takes care of the spanning tree configuration. So configure port fast and BPDU guard. So configure only building 1 as follows. All the access ports that are assigned to VLANs with BPDU guard. Now there's 2 ways that we can do this. Do show VLAN brief. Okay. That are assigned to VLANs with BPDU guard. And boy, this is going to be interesting because building 1 is fast east and that 0, 3. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are trunk ports right here. So then everybody other than 1, 2, 3, and 4 is going to be a trunk port. I'm sorry, is going to be, we're going to turn BPDU guard. So let's do that. Interface range, fast Ethernet 0, 5 to 24. And let's see if this is what they were anticipating. Spanning tree BPDU guard enable. And that jumped us to 85, pretty nice. And then spanning tree port fast on those same ports. And that takes us to 98. So we are 2 points away from crushing this here. If EIGRP has full adjacencies of V4 between all routers, the hosts in the LAN should be able to communicate with the host in the other LANs and the remote server. So let's check that out. Let's pick let's go W4 here, and we'll kill this, and let's see. Can I ping out to 192.0.2.10? Do I have reachability out to that remote server hanging off the internet? And was I supposed to configure IP addresses? Well, let's see here. On the host I picked, what is he set up with? So he's got the right default gateway, and he's got an IP in the 10.10.0.11. We don't need DNS because I'm using the IP address. And so let's come back here. So that's timed out. Let's trace, because something is not right here. 192.0.2.10. And before we take a look, all right, he's not getting anywhere. And you know what it probably is? What was that, W2? Who was I on? E2? Can't remember which host I was on. So building 1 didn't have the IP, or I'm sorry, the VLAN. So do show VLAN briefs. Let me see what we've got going on here. Let's see. Yeah, because those ports are showing orange here. And I'm wondering, W2, let's see, do show run. Is that range of ports shut down or are they up? Aha! So take a look. Very interesting, right? The ports aren't red, they're orange, and it's showing those are shut down, but not. So here's what I'm going to do. If we're still in there, I'm going to say no shut. Let's bring up everything in that range. And that doesn't take any points away from us, because what we're interested in here is we're interested in why the ports, okay, let's just pick a different, we'll pick a different host here. Let me come over to E3 because we've got green lights blinking here. Let's check the IP config first. All right, not set, so let's set this to 10 dot, what was it, 10.1.10.0? No, 10.1.0.1 is what we wanted. And let's punch out of here. Let's get to the command prompt here. And let's say, can we ping 192.1, I'm sorry, 192.0.2.10? And then request, aha, so we can off the E hosts. So that's good. But these guys over here, you'll notice all of the ports are orange down here on the switch side. So, and that is giving me some grief. So let me take a look here. I'm going to try to pick off VLAN 10. So let's see if it's interface fast Ethernet 010. Shut. Yeah, so W1 is connected to that interface. So now I'm going to say no shut. And it comes up, but it's staying orange. All right, so let's do this. Let me see what it didn't like. Gig 00 port status. I'm assuming that's tied to the one that it wanted to shut down. And gig 00 on router 2. So it doesn't like the port status. So this explains our IPv6 issue, possibly. So let's take a look at router 2 and then just the network gig 00. So that's kind of got me scratching my head. And it may be that I did not properly understand. So gig 00 on, wait a second, it said, can I even get into, I can't get into the cloud. It said, did that say router 2? And I apologize here. Yeah, it's saying router 2. Router 2.2. So that must be east 2.2. And 3 has got to be what? So we're golden with the exception of gig 00 on router 2. All right, sometimes these activities get me turned around here. So router 2, I'm assuming, is east. And let's see. Let's do a show run here. And it's talking about EIGRP for IPv6 on gig 00. Oh, yeah. Super oversight on my part. Interface gig 00 and IPv6 EIGRP 99. And that was an epic oversight on my part, because we definitely needed that. And that would probably explain the issues with E22. Let's go back to the command prompt. Not being able to reach 2001 DB8 colon, oh, it should be colon echo. Sorry about that. I believe that that's an echo. There we go. Okay, so we're good there, and that was my fault overlooking that. So now it's that single, it says network. Gig 00 network. Let me go back and look at the description they're giving there, because what else is tied to that? PC1 and PC4. Gig 00. Is it the switch? Do they give us the switches? Yeah, they give us all the switches. Okay, so I am truly at a loss here, but we're not giving up on this. We are going to nail this down. So gig 00, and it talked about PC4. It's got to be talking about these PCs here. So, oops, sorry, configuration is locked. So let's take a look at gig 00 across the board here. And let's see, Ian, show run. Is there something I forgot to do? Now that router's not running EIGRP. So that's fine. In the gig 00, it's up. There's no question it's up. So then let's check gig 00 here. Speed and duplex are auto. So that's correct. We've got the preempt is good. And interesting that the IPv6 EIGRP 0 command is not showing up on that interface. Interface gig 00, IPv6 EIGRP end, let me say write mem, and that gave us the point, and this activity, okay, now is there, okay, I see it now. Okay, the interface is there, and the interface is up. HSRP is configured. Central has no gig 00, but let's see. Central has no gig 00. So is it west? Is it looking for something off of west? And I may have missed something here catastrophic. So we'll come back to west, show run. Yeah, gig 00, no IP. Let's get in the global config. I'm going to go into interface gig 00, and let's shut it down. And then let's say no shut. And that is not what it's looking for. To show run. And I don't believe it's looking for the IPv6, or I'm sorry, not the IPv6, but the IPv6 command. It can't be that. IPv6 EIGRP 99. I hope that's not it. All right, at this point, I'm grasping at straws here. The network command. I'm going to pause, and I don't want to drag you through this as I'm working through the different interfaces. So I'm going to pause, and then I'll restart back up when I get this resolved. So we will be right back. All right, so we're back, and this is a bit embarrassing. So I went right by, when I saw the gig 00 and the results, the activity thing, remember we had issues with IPv6 and the connectivity using the telnet command from E22, right? And I said I would come back to it. Well, here, it's right here is the problem. And I literally was walking through every single step again. And it's this step right here. That is the step we're missing to get to the 100%. So if I come to E22 and we go to the terminal, the command prompt window, and I rerun my telnet command and I log in with the password of Cisco. I'm on test, right? The test cloud, because this is where I needed to go in order to enable, right? And it's admin, password of admin. So show IP interface brief, and you can see gig 00 is down. And I was chasing all the gig 00 interfaces along here thinking that, oh, I had done something, I missed something in there. But it's all about that interface. So you've got to go to this interface, go into global config, interface gig 00, and no shut. And that is going to take us from there, it better, from 99 to 100. Okay, yeah, so I apologize about that. A couple mistakes in there, but hey, those happen. And this is the end of Packet Tracer EIGRP, or the ScaN EIGRP Practice Skills Assessment. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you on Tuesday evening. Have a great rest of the weekend.